Thank you very much, Helen, and welcome everybody. Good morning. And it is fantastic to finally be back in person and have everybody here, as well as those that are at home or in the office visiting us online. I want to talk today about data excellence. Now, there's going to be a number of takeaways from this. I really hope by the end of this presentation you will have heard at least two things that are interesting, and one that's truly useful in changing your mindset on a couple of things around data. All of us come from different backgrounds and different levels, but let me try and share where we're going to go with this. I'll spend some time on this for a moment, and I challenge you to think for a moment. What do you think the biggest challenge in the world of data is today? The single biggest challenge. And typically, if we ask this question to a bunch of different people, some people say, oh, it's all about connecting to data, and some of it's real-time and streaming, and some of it's structured, and some of it's unstructured, and I've got all this stuff. Other people are worried about where they're storing data. It's all about moving my data to the cloud and trying to get more agile, and I can't move it to cloud because I've got some compliance. For some people, it's about moving data around and getting it to the right people in the right place. All of this is often underpinned by a set of challenges around transforming and governing that data. So if I ask you, just take a moment and think about that and say, what do you think if you had to pick the single biggest problem, the single biggest challenge the world has around data today? What do you think it is? So I'm going to share with you a point of view I'd love to ask each and every one of you individually. Whilst all of these things are critically important, and in the world of data, I think many of us will have learnt the lessons that it isn't possible to get one of these things right and walk away from all of the others. It's important that, all of these things happen, but which of these things is the most important? For us here at Talend, I think what we've come from working with thousands of different organizations and some of the most complex companies around the world is really to get to the point that the biggest challenge in data today is not one of those technical challenges around data. Each of those technical challenges around data can be solved with enough people and technology. The biggest challenge is, am I getting value from data? And so when we start with this premise and we say the biggest problem in the world today, and this is the thing that I really want you to get across. If I have 400 different data sources and I connect to all of them and I bring all of that data together and I munge it and I augment my data and I apply quality and I do all my metadata management and I catalog it and I document it and I apply quality rules and I do all this great technology and I've got this wonderful set of data, you have to remember that all of that intrinsically delivers zero business value. There is no value in bringing data together and munging it and putting it somewhere. And there's many organizations, and I'm in the vendor world, and so there are many vendors that would love you to spend more time munging data and bringing it together and put more and more in the cloud and spend more time processing and doing different quality things. But if you never get value from data, all of that is completely wasted. And so when we start with this premise that this is the single biggest challenge we have today, it forces us to think differently about data. We need to move to the consumption side because 100% of the value of data, 100% of the value is created when data is consumed. So if we start with that consumption first and say, what do I need to consume to generate the highest amount of value within my organization today? How do I focus on doing exactly that first and work backwards to what data I need to support it? I challenge you to believe that today you will always have more data than you will ever be able to process. There will be more sources of data and more systems and more data created than you'll ever truly be able to process and create value from. So you cannot start with the data, the raw data end, and say, my goal is to ingest all of my data and get it in one place and then do all this stuff with it, because you'll never get there. It's an endless journey. We have to start with the other end. So in looking at this, Talend as an organization focuses on what we call data health. And I'm going to define that for you because often when I talk about data health, people have a perception that it's about the data. It's less about the data. Data health describes how well an organization's data supports its business objectives. And when we stop thinking about healthy data being quality It's not about quality. You can have the highest quality data with amazing approvals and stewardship and compliant across everything. But again, if it doesn't support a business objective, that is in fact unhealthy data. You have wasted time and effort and resources of your organization in order to bring that data together and deliver no business value. So when we start with data that delivers an outcome, is valuable and is healthy, and we work backwards from there, we're able to create something very different. So data health is about that relationship between the data and the business. It's not about the data itself. But data health is underpinned by many things. If we're going to focus our organization on data health and say, I need to deliver value from my data, I need to deliver outcomes of value for the organization from the data I have, we look at 4 pillars that support that. There is the obvious ones of things like analytics. We need to be able to bring data together to provide insights for doing decision making. In my world, often that isn't enough stakeholders to make a data project successful. Once you've spent your money to bring data together for analytics, how do I get a dozen other consumers, my customers, my partners, my employees, to drive a unique experience from that data to generate exponentially more value, and usually for far more people? Modernizing cloud data, I'm not here to tell you the cloud is a thing. People want to move to the cloud. It's important for agility and scale and efficiency. The acceleration of operational data, and making sure the right people have the right data at the right time. We cannot have unfettered access to all sorts of data by anyone in the organization. And the 4th pillar is this establishing data excellence. It's the one I'm going to focus on in the remaining 13 minutes and 6 seconds I have. So when we look at this, there's a certain set of challenges that we have as an organization, the common things that we're trying to do. We're trying to provide better ways to access data. I want to have a marketplace. For me, I see this pyramid where many organizations will try and get data to a central point. But the reality is it's more like an hourglass where I need to get that data out then to the maximum number of people. I need to get data in a controlled, governed, managed way such that the greatest number of people can consume that. I end up with too many data sources that I'm trying to manage because the number of sources will continuously grow. The lack of lineage. And lineage, in terms of trying to get to compliance and governance within an organization, is one of the most challenging things, because there's usually not a straight line of lineage. It's not like that piece of data came from here. That piece of data came from 4 different sources that were merged together, that was transformed with a combination of automated and manual decisions and changes that were made to that data before it got to this point. And there were other transformations that happened before it is finally consumed. So because it is a many-to-many complex thing, that ability to do lineage becomes incredibly important. We must have things like quality. We need to have quality data so that it can deliver the outcomes we want, but quality alone will not get us there. So when we focus on this and we look at the big themes that we focus on, managing compliance and risk, increasing the team productivity, making sure the right people have the right data at the right time, but doing it in a controlled, governed, managed way that still gives us business agility. I don't want to create a bottleneck in the organization in order to satisfy my governance and compliance. I need to have people being able to have access, but not in an uncontrolled way. We know the reasons that this becomes very hard. It becomes very hard because the average enterprise organization today has more than 400 data sources, and it grows every day. I blame SaaS vendors for this. SaaS is wonderful, but it becomes very easy for people to create another silo of data. When a line of business, a different group, someone signs up, and all of a sudden we have another data source. 80% of organizations today provide too much access. Too many people have access to data they should not have access to within an organization, leaving the organization vulnerable to all sorts of issues that come with the wrong people having access. The regulatory compliance requirements, both internally and externally, have never been greater than we have today. And the changing environments that I'm old enough to remember the days when you would go somewhere and people say, oh, we're an IBM shop, or we're a Microsoft shop, or we're an Oracle shop. Remember those days? And then, then people went through saying, I'm an AWS shop or I'm a Google shop. The days of single cloud are over. Everybody's gone multi-cloud now. And so that ability to support any combination of running private cloud, public cloud, different cloud vendors, and still supporting some on-prem becomes critically important. So how do we get this balance? On one side, we want to democratize access to data. We want to make sure that everybody has access to data. Hey, I want everyone to be a data-driven organization, have access to the right data whenever they want it. But then you realize you can't possibly do that and meet any of the governance or internal or external compliance requirements that you would have to be able to satisfy that. So how do we get that middle ground of efficiency that allows us to do it? I'm going to jump a couple of slides. Don't be concerned. I'm trying to keep us to time. So as we break down data excellence, the first thing we must do is make sure at the raw level we do actually have quality and trust of our data. And I'm going to talk about what trust is in just a moment. It's a little more than just quality, and it's a really important distinction that we make. We need to make sure that we're establishing and enforcing a set of internal policies that says only certain people have access to certain data, right? I need to involve people. People are the scarcest resource we have in the world of data today, and there are clearly never enough data individuals to be able to satisfy all of the data jobs that we have today. So using those people, we have to provide them access to data so that they can provide us the input to make sure our data is great. And be able to satisfy our external requirements. That comes under the headings of things like obfuscation of data, as well as things like lineage. When we talk about trust, and at Talend, we focus a lot on the trust of data. And trust, it's often been said, it takes a village to raise a child. It takes an entire organization to raise high trust data. And so it's many faceted, it's a people thing. Trust comes not only from quality. I can automate quality, I can use quality rules, I can use automation in order to improve the quality and the completeness and the accuracy of data, but that still doesn't mean it's trusted. Trust will come from things like how many other people consume it. If I'm the first person to use this data set within my organization, how much do I trust this data? We are a herd, as far as our primal background. If 16 other groups within the business already use that data set, I will intrinsically trust it much more. So there is a combination of things, of timeliness, of quality, of the number of different people and consumers of data that actually make up a trust score that allow us to measure and understand whether I should or shouldn't trust this data and use it. So many organizations actually have great data and people don't trust it. Other organizations have data that should never be trusted, and yet people trust it and they make bad decisions for the organization. So making sure that we can first of all measure and quantify data so that we have this quantifiable trust score that says, I know what I'm looking at. Can I safely use this data to try and deliver an outcome? Making sure that all of my policies are actually consistently implemented. Quality is a really interesting one. We see a lot of organizations that say, well, yeah, we have 4 different quality tools. Well, that in itself is a disaster. Unless quality is always done the same way, unless you have a central library of quality rules, no 2 engineers will develop exactly the same quality rule. And what will happen is you'll have different sets of automation driving different results. The data won't be the same, it won't be comparable because it's come through different routes. We have to have centralization of how we do things like quality. I also need to be able, as part of this process, to make sure that my data stewards know who is using the data. Where is it being consumed? And that's always complex when it's not a direct line of sight. If I had direct line of sight that says that data comes out of this table in this Oracle database, that would be very simple. But the fact is, when we run a data platform and we support a business, pieces of data will go through many transformations, and the ability to maintain that lineage from where it comes is very difficult. Similarly, with things like my external compliance, as I go through this process, I need to be able to find PII data automatically. If it somehow ends up in a strange field, right, I end up with PII data stuck in a phone number field or stuck in something that it should never have been in, I still need to be able to find that, and the use of automation at scale to do that. The ability to make sure that I'm masking and obfuscating data so that when people do see it and do have access to it, they have access only if they really need the original data in order to meet my compliance. And making sure that this use of lineage, that I know where everything is coming from, can be used to satisfy my internal and external requirements. So a couple of case studies and how we look at this. I'm probably going to spend more time on the third one, but Wolters Kluwer, a great example here of an organization that needed to go through a process of bringing together all of their data in order to create a trusted data warehouse that had all of their data at the right quality so that they could share that out within their organization to be able to create this concept of a citizen analyst. I talked about the hourglass kind of shape. We have so many data sources we need to bring together to make the data simple and understandable so that we can maximize the number of consumers. The citizen anything, the citizen data analyst, the citizen, machine learning, there's a word for that anyway. But basically having people, yes, someone was awake. As we go through that process, we want to make sure that we can have these citizen kind of roles, that we don't need every data person in our organization to have a PhD in data science to be able to do anything with data. The organization will never scale when we need to be able to do that. Equally, Ariba as an organization, and Ariba supplies a whole bunch of information to various financial services and banks around the world. Their need to be able to have a governed data lake that says, as they go through this process and they're sharing out this data, whether they can do all of their fraud detection while still having compliant data when they're supplying data, such sensitive data to so many organizations, they needed the ability to implement those policies and bring it together on a single platform. Petronas is one of the ones. I'm based in Singapore. I have the opportunity to work closely with them as an organization. You may know Petronas because they have a sticker on the side of a Formula One car. But Petronas as an organization is a massive oil and gas organization that people often know. However, about a third of their revenue now comes from renewable energy. They, as an organization, decided they were actually a data organization. They now generate $1 billion a year out of their data platform. Right? In bringing together, at the moment they're on a journey. They've got about 45 of their data sources that are all brought together out of the hundreds of companies that they have, the subsidiaries that they run, and on a journey to about 200. And they run a data mart internally where people are able to self-service data sets in a controlled, governed, managed way. The revenue and the agility it brings them as an organization is absolutely incredible. So as we go through this, if we look at the pieces that one needs to put this together, we need, as we often think about data coming in from the left and being consumed on the right, for me, you get a flow of data that goes across, but in the opposite direction, you also have all of the metadata. And this whole concept of a data fabric, as the data will flow in one direction and the metadata will flow in the other direction, what we cannot have is any air gaps or breaks. When we change technologies, when I buy a tool over here and I write a script over there and I use a different technology here, as soon as there is one line or one air gap in your architecture, no value will be delivered because you either won't get the flow of data or you won't get the flow of metadata that allows you to achieve data excellence because of the governance compliance requirements that you have. So as we go through this process of looking at the catalog and tracing and the mapping as making sure that we're protecting our data, we need a set of data quality tools. We need to be able to protect our data. We need to be able to provide access in an automated way to different people. And here at Talend, what we do is provide a platform, a single platform of role-based interfaces that allow us to support that end-to-end journey that allows us to deliver data excellence. So I hope what you take away from today is a few very small things. If you take away the concept that, I'm going to finish it up here because I'm at time. What we're really looking to do is make sure you as an organization can get value from data. Deliver data health to your organization. Start with the end in mind, the consumption, but the need to do it in a controlled, governed, managed way. The use of that metadata, so the flow of data in the two different directions is able to make you successful. So I leave it there. I hope you take away at least one thing that's truly useful and two that were very interesting. Please come and talk to us at the booth if you'd like to explore that journey any further. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the day.